Welcome back to Veronica Live, and we're here with our first guest of the morning, and he has been on the show before. We are so pleased to welcome back State Attorney Larry Basford, and he is covers the 14th Judicial Circuit, and he's running for office. So welcome back, Larry.
Good morning. Nice day here in Lynn Haven, although it is raining a little bit.
I know. I was joking with John that we live in not the Sunshine State this year. It's the gloom state of Florida.
State.
I want more sun. You are a busy man, and you are working hard every day to fight the bad guys, and we want people to get to know who you are. So Larry, as our state attorney, tell us your background and how you got into law.
Well, let's see. To start off with, I'm a fifth-generation Floridian. I was born in Marianna. That's up in Jackson County. Graduated from Marianna High School. Went up to play a little baseball in junior college in Alabama. Then I transferred to FSU, where I graduated with honors with the degrees in criminology and law. I financed my college education by a series of jobs in construction, in Alabama and Florida, and then actually pipeline construction over in the Middle East in Iran.
Oh, wow.
And then before I went to law school, I worked on a gas and oil rig out in Louisiana. I actually started my legal career in St. Augustine as a prosecutor over there. But when Jim Appleman, who was the state attorney at the time, offered me an opportunity to come back home, I took advantage of that. And it's been an honor and privilege to prosecute here in the 14th Circuit since that time. For most of my legal career, I have been a prosecutor, but I was in private practice for a few years before, in a civil law practice. That involves commercial litigation, landlord and tenant, homeowners associations, wills, contract disputes, things of that nature. I was fortunate enough to work my way up through the state attorney's office, starting as a misdemeanor prosecutor, then became a felony prosecutor, eventually promoted to county chief up in Jackson County, and then chief assistant state attorney before I was blessed to be elected as your state attorney in 2020. Through the years, I've been active in my church. That's First United Methodist Church here in Panama City, where I teach Sunday school and attend Mike Lewis Sunday School class. Been president of the Bay County Bar Association. As you know, that's a professional association of local lawyers, and chairman of the 14th Circuit Grievance Committee.
Well,
So, I could go on, but you tell me, you ask some questions, and I'll be glad to answer your questions.
Well, you're a busy guy. I think one of the questions that John and we talk about all the time is, we're so worried about the border and illegals. So how does that impact the 14th Judicial Circuit? Do we get a lot of illegals arrested for crime activities, and then what happens to them?
Yes, it impacts our court system, our criminal justice system, just like it does all across the nation. We have to bring in, I'll give you a couple of examples. We have to bring in interpreters for people with many different languages and sometimes dialects of those languages. And that can slow down a proceeding because you have to have a certified court interpreter when these individuals come to court for their first appearance, arraignments, well, not so much for first appearances, but arraignments, pretrial conferences, meetings with their lawyers, and then if the case ultimately proceeds to trial. So that's an extra expense and burden and slows things down. We also have a number of people who have not respected their laws in their home country, do not respect our laws, the basic law about immigration, and certainly do not have much respect for our laws that the rest of our citizens apply. In addition to bringing in illegal drugs, we've heard about that and the overdoses caused by fentanyl. So yes, it is a great impact throughout the country and on our 14th Judicial Courts.
Larry, one of the things that's been in the news is all these. I have a house up here, west of Atlanta, and as well as in Panama City. And one of the things up here, was the murder recently of a college young lady at college by an illegal immigrant, and not, well, I want to call him it is illegal alien. I want to use the correct legal term, okay?
Sure.
And is that much of a problem in the 14th Circuit area? I mean, with a lot of illegals in there, and what is the crime rate that you're seeing associated with these people?
Well, we've certainly seen an increase in crimes caused by people from other countries. And as you're talking about illegal aliens, we've been fortunate that we have not had anyone murdered here in the 14th Circuit by an illegal alien. However, we see other types of crimes that affect our community: sexual battery, lewd and lascivious acts upon children, thefts, selling of drugs, things of that nature. So yes, there's a broad range of crimes that we are having to prosecute caused by illegal aliens.
Are you seeing any increase? A couple of stories this week were on the squatters, where they're I guess they're being told, these non-government organizations that are aiding all these people coming across the border are apparently publishing instructions on how to squat in a vacant house and how to not get evicted. Is that a problem in Florida, like they see in California, where it takes months to years to get illegal squatters out of a house? I mean, is Florida law very different from, say, California or New York, where that's happening?
Yes, it is very different. And I'm not aware of any cases where we are having that problem with illegal aliens being squatters. We have prosecuted cases where citizens have just moved into vacant houses or apartments or condos and refused to get out when the owner discovered that they were there. And we've prosecuted those people.
That's great. So, Larry, you just kicked off your campaign, and you're going around the county. So I saw on your Facebook page, Larry Basford for State Attorney. You've got a great turnout. What are voters telling you when they meet with you at these events?
Well, I get a wide range of feedback from the voters, and that's one good thing about campaigning. It gives you a chance to get out there and meet so many good citizens, people that I've helped in the past by prosecuting people who have committed violent crimes against them. They're telling me that they want an attorney, a state attorney with experience, someone who knows what they're doing and how to get the job done in an effective manner. That seems to be most of the feedback that I'm getting.
Oh, that's excellent. And I was looking at your work page, sa14.fl.gov, so stateattorney14.fl.gov, and I was seeing all you're definitely sending people to jail. So are there more? Is there a crime that we are seeing more often? Is it the drugs? Because you had, some drug offenses, you had child porn on there, somebody that had murdered somebody. What are we seeing in crime? Because I feel like child pornography is always at the top of the list, and drug offenses definitely as well in these times that we live in.
Well, if you're looking for a common factor related to most of the crimes that we prosecute, you would definitely say drugs, the use or abuse of illegal drugs and or alcohol. That seems to run through most of the cases, whether that be a homicide case, drug trafficking, obviously, thefts, breaking into someone's home to get property to sell so they can further their drug use. Drugs are one of the major causes of crime, and we prosecute those as fast as we can and try to get some serious punishment for those individuals involved in trafficking in drugs. On the other hand, we know that everyone who commits a crime is not dangerous. Some people have mental health problems. Some people have drug abuse problems. And if we're talking about just someone possessing or using, then we want to try to get those people the help that they need so they can take care of their habit, get it under control, and then be productive members of our society. That's the reason we have I've helped promote and establish some of our diversion courts that you're familiar with.
Yeah,
Veterans Court, which has a tremendous success. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you because I saw in the news story that this is like an offshoot of what you're doing when it comes to mental illness and veterans. So talk about that in depth with us.
Yes. Veterans Court was first established by our circuit judge at the time, chief circuit judge at the time, Elijah Smiley, and with the help of Senator George Gaynor, got the funding for that place. And essentially, it is a program that helps veterans who are not charged with violent crimes or involved in drug trafficking to try to get their lives back on track while holding them accountable for their actions. It involves a process. They have to be screened. They have to be honorably discharged from the military. And then they have to want this treatment, because this treatment, these mental health courts and drug courts take a number of months to complete the training process. And Veterans Court for misdemeanors can last up to 12 months. For felonies, it can last 18 to 24 months. And it basically helps them get in contact with the resources and the people they need. Sometimes they need to find housing. Sometimes they need mental health counseling. Sometimes they need substance abuse counseling. And there's a number of these agencies that are out there specifically for veterans to help them get their lives back on track. But sometimes the veterans are unaware of them. And that's why our Veterans Court and the people associated with that's their job, to help them connect with the resources available to them. And I'm glad to say that we have a veteran, an individual, one of our prosecutors who retired from the military, and he now is running our Veterans Court for us. So
that's
we're very
so nice.
proud and very fortunate to have him.
And that was one of my questions. How big is the 14th Judicial Circuit, and how many judges do we have and lawyers that are working and prosecuting all of these the bad guys?
Well, although our circuit is the fourth largest circuit in the state of Florida, and it covers somewhere around 3,800 square miles, we have 13 circuit judges. I believe we have 9 county court judges. And if you're talking about law enforcement, we have 24 state and local law enforcement agencies that employ around 931 law enforcement officers. Now, when they make arrests or they're investigating cases, they submit those to us, and we have 28 prosecutors. I supervise those, as well as a support staff of around 98 people. And wow. Our mission is pretty simple, if you want me to just break it down in the simplest form, and that is to keep our community safe by making the criminal justice system work for everyone. And that means protecting the innocent while convicting the guilty. And when I say work for everyone, that obviously includes making sure that victims, witnesses, and defendants are treated with respect and are protected equally under the law.
Outstanding. Well, I've watched enough Law and Order that's what I dream about, State Attorney Larry Basford. So when we had your competitor that's running against you, he seemed to think, and you are actually, I mean, you're the boss, so you know that it takes a while when people are arrested and to get them to trial. And he kept using the word intake, and so John and I aren't lawyers. So tell us, like, what happens when somebody actually is arrested, and where do they go, and when do they finally get to, get their case heard? Is it, I guess, different if it's a DUI or child porn or a murder? It probably could take longer, I would assume, because you've got to gather evidence. And so what goes into a case and getting it to trial?
Okay. A couple of things. Yes, it does. Each case is different, and certainly the misdemeanor cases that you've referred to, battery, DUIs, those do not take as long as the more serious crimes like murder, molestation of a child, drug trafficking cases sometimes. When law enforcement goes out and makes an arrest, they write their reports. They are booked into the county jail. At that time, there's an intake procedure done at the county jail where people have to answer certain questions. If they have mental health problems, if they have, for instance, we were talking just about veterans, whether or not they are a veteran. This is done at the jails. Then they make first appearance within 24 hours. At first appearance, a judge determines whether or not there is probable cause to believe that this person committed this crime. If so, then the judge either sets a monetary bail or the person is released on a conditional release. For instance, if a local person commits a crime that is nonviolent, then there's a very good chance that person may be released on a conditional release that would require him to keep the court informed of his or her residence and then come to court as directed. However, if that is a dangerous crime or if the person has no ties to the community, then the judge is going to set a monetary bond. And that is going to depend on the severity of the case, of individual's background, things of that nature. Once an arrest is made, then law enforcement, within probably the first week or so, depending on the severity of the case and how complex it is, will submit reports to our office. Once we get those reports in, we review those reports and the other information available to you, and then we have to make a charging decision if the person is in custody within 30 days. If we do not make that charging decision within 30 days, then the individual that has been arrested is entitled to have a hearing to determine why the charges have not been made, and if there's not a justification for that, they are released from jail. Once we make a charging decision, and that has to be based on probable cause, and we go a little bit further than that. Not only do we want probable cause to believe that the individual committed this crime, we want to see enough of information or receive enough of testimony to lead us to believe that will we have enough admissible evidence to prove this case at trial? If so, then we file a charging document known as an information, and that starts the prosecution of a case.
Very interesting.
Do you want me to continue?
Well, Larry, I
wanted
to ask you, with spring break, that's going on right now in particular. Is that same process used for that? I mean, I know we get a lot of out of town people, and they get arrested, for public drunkenness or
alcohol
underage.
On the beach.
Yeah, those type things.
Right.
How is that is that handled differently?
Most of those cases are handled the same way. Sometimes officers are giving summons for people to come to court, and that can be done in the regular course of things also. But a lot of those people that we have down here in spring break committing minor offenses, we used to have a spring break court where we had the judges and the prosecutors and the public defenders go out and actually hold court on the beach. We've gotten away from that. As you know, spring break is not as big and notorious and out of control as it once was here in Bay County and other parts of Florida. At least here in Bay County, we have it under control, and in Gulf County also, as well as the rest of the 14th Judicial Circuit. But a lot of those cases, those are expedited for those, what we would call possession of alcohol on the beach or possession of alcohol by a minor. Those are second-degree misdemeanors, some of the lowest types of crimes that can be committed here in Florida. And we try to move those into a diversion court, either misdemeanor pretrial intervention or our misdemeanor diversion program, so they do not clog up our system. And that's been very effective.
Oh, excellent. And how many criminals do we see in the 14th Judicial Circuit, every year? Is there a number that, that you're kind of dealing with, because you have to make sure you have enough staff and can process everything?
Yes. Well, for the past several years, our felony intake, the number of felony defendants and cases that come in range around 6,000, 6,100, 6,200. Now that is for the entire circuit for all 6 counties.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Now that's just felonies. The misdemeanors may run to 10 to 12,000.
Oh my
goodness. So the numbers can be pretty staggering.
Yeah, and what's the difference between because I know misdemeanors, something small, is that shoplifting, and what and felony? What are some examples of between the two?
Yeah, misdemeanors include things like shoplifting, petty theft, battery, domestic battery, trespass. things of that nature, those are misdemeanor crimes, and a second-degree misdemeanor is punishable by up to 60 days in jail. A first-degree misdemeanor is punishable by up to a year in jail. However, if a person commits a felony, for instance, grand theft, burglary of a dwelling, sexual battery, homicides, DUI manslaughters, those are classified as felonies. And that means they could go to prison for more than a year. And that, again, depends on the severity of the offense. Third-degree felonies, 5 years. Second-degree felonies, up to 15 years. First-degree felonies, 30 years. And then you have first-degree felonies punishable by life. You have life felonies, as well as capital felonies, which are first-degree murder. And now, since the legislature enacted this law last year, sexual battery on a child less than 12 years of age.
Good.
That's also now a possible capital felony.
Excellent.
Yeah, Larry, I want to ask you about some of the drug use characteristics. What Florida basically legalized marijuana to medical marijuana, and we've had guests on before, psychologists, psychiatrists, people that have studied the psychosis, the increase in psychosis associated with marijuana use, and particularly the liberalization of where it's legalized. Are we seeing any of those characteristics in the drug arrests that are being made, where we're seeing particularly teenage psychosis being increased and making things worse?
Well, I was just speaking with my juvenile prosecutor, Callie Overstreet, this week down here in Bay County, as to the types of cases that are most frequently seen in juvenile court. And unfortunately, that is what you've just been discussing, John, is the use of marijuana in vape pens and things of that nature. We've certainly seen an increase in that. I know from experience when I prosecuted people for first-degree murder before and had an opportunity to sit and talk with individuals after the case or their cases were over with. I recall specifically one individual where me and one of my investigators was talking to this female who had committed first-degree murder. How did it get started? Because she had a twin sister who was a very successful nurse. And she said, well, it all started with smoking marijuana, and then I started stealing prescription medication from my mom and dad's medicine cabinet. That led to other drugs and experimenting with other drugs like cocaine and then crack cocaine. And at the time, this is before fentanyl came into play. So there's a dispute. I understand that some people say marijuana is harmless and it doesn't lead to other things. And in many situations, it does not. But in some situations, it is a gateway drug to other things.
Yeah, well, that's what John and I say all the time. I wanted to ask you about your relationships with Sheriff Ford and Chief Talamontez, and then what about like the FBI and DOJ? I assume you deal with all these, local guys, and then some of these bigger organizations. So tell us about your relationships, because that's probably part of being a successful state attorney, I would assume.
Yes, it is. I have a very good working relationship with all of our 6 sheriffs in our county and the other police chiefs and people in charge of law enforcement agencies. As I indicated, we have 24 different state and local law enforcement agencies here that we work with on a weekly basis. And that's important because it takes a team effort in having a successful prosecution. It all starts with the community. Somebody seeing someone break into a friend's house or drug activity at their neighbor's house. That gets reported to law enforcement sometimes. Then law enforcement investigates those cases, and we rely on our law enforcement officers to make thorough investigations, which they do. I think we can all agree that we owe a deep debt of gratitude to our law enforcement officers in this community, not only for what they do and putting their lives on the line each day to catch dangerous criminals, but also how they protected and served us in our time of need after Hurricane Michael and this most recent tornado that we had.
Right.
But we rely on them. We have to have good working relationships with law enforcement in order to have a free exchange of information. And what that means is sometimes most of the time, we agree with what law enforcement have done in a case. Sometimes we have to tell them, look, we need some more investigation done on this case before we go forward. And sometimes even after that investigation has been complete, there is still not enough of admissible evidence to prove that this individual committed this crime. When that happens, we have to have a good relationship with law enforcement, and they respect us enough to know that when we tell them we can't go forward with this prosecution, they still respect us and continue to work closely with us on the other cases.
That's great.
Larry, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, the state attorney's position it's an elected position, so it's political, obviously. And we've had a new term introduced into the lexicon recently called lawfare. And I don't want to get into individual, who is what, but I want to talk more about the concept of particularly where you have state attorneys that are target somebody, and then what looks to me almost like judges that are complicit in these prosecutions, and it's like I keep, to me it's like people are losing respect for the law when they see what's going on in some of the states like New York and up here in Atlanta, with Fani Willis and stuff. Are there safeguards in Florida that prevent this kind of thing from happening? I mean, to me, I'm waiting for the adults to come into the room and say, hey, this is not the way our judicial system works. We do not target people and prosecute them and find a crime to fit them. I mean, I thought that was part of the Constitution, but apparently it's not. So I'm just curious, what are your views as a state attorney and an elected official on what's going on, and what safeguards are in place in Florida?
Let me start off with what you first brought up there about judges, and then we'll get into the rest of this. We have had some very good judges appointed recently, and I say recently within the last 8 to 10 years, and we had some appointed even before that. But Governor Scott and Governor DeSantis has served us very well with the appointment of the judges here in the 14th Judicial Circuit and their predecessors. We have 13 circuit judges and as I said, 9 county judges that are excellent. And I agree with you, John, that now, perhaps more than ever, and we hear this term over and over again, many people are concerned about what's going on in our country. And it is essential to our system of justice that our citizens have faith in our criminal justice system, faith that their state attorney will always do what is right, that everyone will be treated fairly and protected equally under the law. And that means prosecuting guilty people, okay? But it also means protecting innocents. You asked, what are the safeguards in place? Well, obviously, the police officers have a tremendous amount of discretion when they go out and make cases, and we rely on them to use their discretion. And then when those cases get brought to court, we have to rely on the state attorney that he or she will always make the right decisions, keeping in mind our mission is to keep our community safe and make the justice system work for everyone, victims, witnesses, and defendants. And then we have judges, and I would venture to say that we have some of the finest judges in the state of Florida, perhaps in the nation. When you look at the youth and the experience that we have locally, as well as on appellate courts here in Florida, there are safeguards built in the system all along. But basically, when we're talking about criminal prosecutions, I can't control what goes on in these other cities. I can control what goes on in my office and what happens in the 14th Judicial Circuit. Throughout my career, The people have trust me, and it has certainly been a privilege to be a prosecutor. And as long as I'm in this office, we will continue to always do the right thing.
Outstanding. And what is your relationship with Ashley Moody, our Florida Attorney General? So, do you all come together and, once a year? And does she push out some of the agenda from the governor? How does that work, Larry?
Yes, ma'am. We work together with Ms. Moody's office when we're considering proposed legislation. When I say we, not just me, but the Florida Prosecuting Attorneys Association, that consists of 19 of our elected state attorneys throughout the state of Florida. So we work with her on that basis. If there's an individual or, for instance, when we're prosecuting cases and it includes multiple jurisdictions, then we have the option of asking the statewide prosecutor to come in and assist us with those cases. That doesn't happen that often, but they are currently assisting us with a string of cases where these gangs, you've heard about gangs, but This is a theft gang that is growing across the state and perhaps the nation of going in and stealing, robbing, if you will, Walmart stores, a string of Walmart stores. And that goes not only just in our jurisdiction, but in other jurisdictions. In those situations, she has allowed her statewide prosecutor to assist us. So we do work closely with her, and she also is a friend of law enforcement.
Excellent. Well, I love that. And then I wanted to ask you, is human trafficking a real big problem in the Panhandle?
Veronica, human trafficking is a problem everywhere, not just in these foreign countries, but also in the United States, as well as in the 14th Judicial Circuit. We currently are prosecuting human trafficking cases. I don't want to get into the details of that, but human trafficking affects a number of people. It is a $1 billion industry. Some people say it rivals the amount of money that is used in the illicit drug trade, or as well as the sale of illegal weapons on the open market, not just here in the United States, but in other countries. And when we're talking about human trafficking, we're not just talking about labor and sex trafficking, although that can sometimes be together, where you have the human trafficking and forcing someone to work or be in servitude, as well as someone who is being forced to engage in sexual acts for commercial purposes. So yes, it is a problem, and we just recently concluded a case, I say recently, last year, when we convicted Michael Harrison Hunt for attempting to kill one of his victims in human trafficking. He actually killed a young lady. He and his associate killed a young lady that looked like her. That was a mistaken identity, and attempted to kill 3 other individuals that were in her home. We successfully prosecuted him not for human trafficking, but for murder and 3 counts of attempted murder, as well as burglary. And today he sits on death row.
Outstanding. Well, one of the things that always comes up with every politician, political person that we talk to is we want to know their support for the Second Amendment and where they stand with red flag laws. Because, and Florida is just such a wonderful state to be, a gun Second Amendment person. So where do you stand, Larry?
Well, I agree. I think Florida is a wonderful state. This is the best place to live and work and raise a family. This part of the state is, as far as the Second Amendment, I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in all of our amendments. And I am a lifetime member of the National Rifle Association. You asked me a question about the red flag laws, and I know some people have some very strong feelings about that.
They do.
That is a civil procedure. That is implemented by the sheriff's office, and it has to have the approval of a court. And that procedure has been used very, very sparingly in the 14th Judicial Circuit. And basically what it involves is a process where law enforcement has to come in and establish that a person is dangerous. They represent a danger to themselves or particularly others. And because of one reason or another, a lot of times it's mental health reasons, they are a danger to be in possession of firearms at that time. If so, then the court makes a determination and those guns or those weapons may be seized. But that procedure is used very, very sparingly in the 14th Judicial Circuit.
I like that, to hear that. So I guess why, you could be having a big, law office and you are working for the people, which, why do you choose to be our state attorney when you could have your own firm and, all the lawyers I know, they're on every billboard and making zillions of dollars. So why do you choose to be our state attorney? Why is it important to you, this position?
I suppose it comes down to this. I care. I care about our community. I want to keep our community safe, and I want the criminal justice system to work the way it should work. I've led by example while I've been in office. Let me just give you. Have you got time? Can I give you a little analogy here?
Oh, please.
When the people elected me as their state attorney, I had been a chief assistant. I had been over major crimes. I had worked my way up from the bottom. And experience and results matter. When you're sick and a doctor tells you need a surgeon, you want a surgeon. We want a surgeon who has performed that operation many times. When we get ready to travel out of the airport here on a jet, we want a pilot who has hundreds of hours in that seat. Or when we build or rebuild our homes after a disaster, we want a contractor who is licensed and who has experience. When we elect a state attorney to be the chief prosecutor and manage a law office, or the largest law office in the circuit, we want someone with experience. I am the prosecutor who's been a person who has tried over 250 cases, anything from misdemeanors all the way up to first-degree murder cases seeking the death penalty on individuals. And according to a report issued by the governor last year to grade state attorneys, our office ranked number one in sending dangerous people to prison. We're also number one when it comes to efficiency for the fiscal year 2022 through 23. We haven't got the latest reports yet, but that means that we've had the highest clearance rate in Florida. Essentially, that means we are disposing of more cases than are being brought into our cases, working down that backlog. And we did this by putting together a team of hardworking, dedicated prosecutors and support staff, and then working with our law enforcement partners like we talked about. Why do I want to do this? This is a community where I raised my children. This is where my children have returned to raise my grandchildren. I want to keep our community safe and make it safe not only for my family, but safe when we send our children and grandchildren to school, safe when we go to work, safe when we go to worship, and certainly safe when we go to sleep in our beds at night. And to do this, we have to be passionate about this. We have to maintain our relationships with law enforcement and make sure that the state attorney's office is a friend of law enforcement and a friend of the community. That's why I'm running, to keep this community safe for everyone and also make sure everyone's rights are protected.
I love it. Because John and I talk all the time. Living in Florida, we do feel safe with you there in the office and with Sheriff Ford. Criminals don't rule here in Bay County or the Panhandle. So it's wonderful. Do you have any challenges, Larry, that, I wish y'all made more money because I know how hard, I'm just astonished
Sure.
by the numbers. I mean, because you said.
Right. I was going to ask Larry. One thing I really admire about you, Larry, you mentioned you were a pipeliner and you worked on the oil platform. You are not a stranger to hard work. I know people that do that work for a living, and it is tough. And is that colored your experience over the years, or help you form how you deal with people?
Absolutely, John. I mean, I've worked in agriculture jobs. I started working when I was about 12 years old, making $3 a day, working in tobacco, and then that progressed to watermelons, and then in the hay fields. So yes, and then in the oil fields. Working in the oil field is some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life. Physically demanding and dangerous too. But I think we're all familiar with Lee Corso. Famous coach, and he's always on ESPN. Well, not always. He's getting a little older. But he said coaching is not a job, it's a privilege. And that's the way I feel about prosecutors and prosecuting cases. It's not a job, it is a privilege. Every day when prosecutors go to work, we have a difference to make our part of the world just a little bit better and a little bit safer. We have an opportunity to help people with their problems. That could be victims. That could be sometimes people that just make bad decisions. But we have a difference to make people's lives better and to keep our community safe. And it is a very rewarding job, maybe not financially. Mm-hmm. And we do lose people to Morgan. Excuse me. You had talked, Veronica, about some of the challenges.
Yes, I was going to continue with that question too.
The biggest challenge, obviously, is continuing to maintain the public's trust in our criminal justice system. The other challenges that we face, and these aren't necessarily in any order, are the recruitment and the retention of good people like me who care about making our community safe and making the system work. We do get rated by personal injury attorneys, because once we get attorneys that have been there a couple of years and get some trial experience, then they're ready sometimes, and they have to go out for financial reasons to make more money. So that's always a problem. Then also, it's a continuing challenge to mentor and train our younger prosecutors. We have some very bright and passionate prosecutors, but we have to mentor them to make sure that they use their training and education always in an effort to seek justice. We have to continue to build our relationships with law enforcement and community partners like the Children's Advocacy Center, be transparent with the decisions that we make. And sometimes that is very difficult when the public wants to know what's going on about a case. And it's often not proper for us to comment on pending cases. And the public sometimes doesn't understand that. But we have tried our best to be as open and transparent as we can. And then another challenge that unfortunately keeps coming up is construction fraud. The last hurricane we had so many people that we were able to help, but unfortunately there was a lot that we were not able to help. And we had the construction fraud task force with law enforcement, and we were that was just an enormous success from what the Department of Business and Professional Regulations has told us. And we were able to help a lot of people get restitution, but unfortunately sometimes we weren't able to help individuals, and that continues to be a challenge. Even to this day, we're prosecuting some of those cases from hurricane and then some after the hurricane, and that was not in a state of emergency. People need to deal with licensed, reputable contractors, and oftentimes that means getting someone local that has a good reputation locally, even if you have to wait.
Well, what are we missing,
Those
Larry?
are some of the challenges.
What are we missing? I know people can find you. We've got to send people to your Facebook page, Larry Basford for State Attorney, so that they can see what you've been up to.
Yes, I should have my website up. I believe next week we're going to try to get that up.
Okay.
Some of the successes that we've had that we really haven't had a chance to talk about this morning. We defeated the efforts to consolidate our circuit with one of those mega circuits, the successes of our diversion courts, we touched on that. Our critical incident review team, that's a team that we've put together in my administration of our most experienced prosecutors to review cases when officers use deadly force, as well as first-degree murder cases and other complex cases. The resentencing of some people that had previously been convicted and sentenced to death row. And as a result of the Hearst decision, we've had to go through the resentencing, to seek the death penalty and put those back on death row. We've been successful with Kaler, Orm, and Craven. Those people have been returned to death row. Well, they've stayed on death row. And then these fentanyl overdoses. We and other state attorneys across the state within the last couple of years have started prosecuting these fentanyl overdoses, prosecuting the dealers who have sold the drugs, given the drugs to individuals who then overdosed. We've been prosecuting those and hopefully to deter people from even engaging in that. But we'll see if we're going to be successful in deterring individuals once they learn that they can be prosecuted for selling drugs that causes someone to overdose and die. Those are some of the successes that we've had.
Love it.
I don't know how much more time we've got.
No, we have plenty of time, but I wanted to ask you too, because on your Facebook page, you are blessed with the 3 cutest grandchildren on the planet. And so I know that must be part of why you fight so hard. So tell me about your grandfather role and how you're fighting for them.
Well, as I said, I want my grandchildren to be able to feel safe when they walk down the street to get on the bus to go to a public school, just like my children were. I want them to be safe at school. My grandchildren, I am just blessed that my children chose, after they finished college and started their careers in other parts of the state and country, as when we're talking about my daughter, but when they got ready to start their family, they wanted to come home to a safe environment and be close to relatives. And that's one of the reasons that drives me to do this job. I care about what happens not only to my children, but to other people's children and grandchildren. My granddaughter is 7. My grandson is 5, and my youngest granddaughter just is 15 months old. I get an opportunity, since I'm so blessed that they have moved back home, I get to see them. In fact, I spent the day with 2 of them yesterday. I get to help coach my grandson in baseball. Well, it's wee ball. I get to help him, and as I help his father. And, it's just great to live in a community that has so many good recreational opportunities available to our young people. And this is where I grew up. This is where my children were raised. This is where my grandchildren will be raised. I hope my great-grandchildren will. And I want everyone's grandchildren and children and family to feel safe in our community.
And when is your election? When's the primary?
Well, our primary, if there are no non-party affiliations or Democratic candidates for state attorney, will be decided on August the 20th. Obviously, there will be early voting, but that will be the day, I believe, August the 20th is when this primary will be decided.
Well, now, one reminder on that, if there's just 2 Republicans, the primary is the election. So
that's correct.
That's why I make sure people understand that. It's important to vote in the primary, if there's just 2 people there.
Perfect.
That's true.
Well, Larry, what are we missing? It's been wonderful. I'm glad you're at the helm there. Would love to have you back, and we always love having you on Veronica Live.
Well, I guess you could say the bottom line is our community needs a state attorney with experience, someone who can lead and who knows what to do and how to do it. I'm the career prosecutor who has the actual experience, and with your support, with the community's support, I'll use that experience to continue to lead by example and to keep our community safe. I appreciate the opportunity to serve our community. This is not an entitlement. This, as Lee Corso said, this is a privilege. And I recognize this, and I take my position and responsibility very seriously.
Well,
I
wonderful.
certainly appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning.
Yeah, it's been outstanding, and we've been talking with State Attorney Larry Basford, and we'll stay abreast of your election, sir, and all the good stuff you're doing in the office. We'll be right back on Veronica Live.